Hey guys, so today I'm going to be ranking all the pets I currently own. These can be absolutely amazing pets to have in your life, and of course I love all my pets, but some require more work than others in my experience. So let's look at the animals we'll be ranking today. So of course the first one, leopard geckos, then crested geckos, chahoua, guinea pigs, tropical fish, ants, African fruit beetles, and a dog. So we have quite a range to look at today. At the top of this chart we have challenging, so this pet's care may be, a lot. It may have a big impact on your life. Don't get me wrong, I may recommend them, but they're certainly not something you'd get on a whim. Like, of course you should never impulse buy a pet, but say one day you bought a stick insect and one day you bought a horse, the horse might have a bigger impact on your life. Then we have somewhat difficult, so this means they pose a few challenges that may not be ideal for everyone. Then intermediate, so this animal has some special requirements, but this shouldn't be too difficult to achieve and maintain. Then beginner, so this animal is quite hardy, fairly easy to care for, but not the easiest. And then at the bottom we have easy peasy squeeze a lemon. So totally recommend this as a passive pet. I don't know if that's a thing. A passive pet, is that a thing? So like a pet that requires very little care or attention, but they can still thrive. They don't need you, they're independent as long as you give them a bit of food. So the first one we're going to look at are tropical fish. Now this may surprise a lot of you, but I'm putting these in somewhat difficult. Now, I've owned ember tetras for about 4 years now, and don't get me wrong, these guys are chill, they're hardy, interesting to watch. If you were ranking, all my fish, ember tetras would probably be easy peasy. However, me and aquatics do not mix. I always thought I'd love an aquarium, I'd love a pond, I'd love a waterfall, but for some reason, anything that requires a lot of water ends up stressing me out. Kudos to anyone who mainly has aquatic pets, because you have the nitrogen cycle, the cyanobacteria, or the water test changes. It's a lot for me personally. Now, thankfully, my boyfriend loves aquatics, so they're kind of mainly his pets, but I do find fish a little more challenging than I expected. I definitely would prefer to stick to animals that spend most of their time on land. But cost-wise, fish can be expensive to set up, I guess, but the animal themselves and their food really isn't too much. Next up, African fruit beetles, also known as sun beetles. So I think I'm going to put these at beginner, only because they do require some heat, a variety of fruit to eat, and that fruit can attract some flies and produce a bit of smell. So they're not a pet that completely affects your life, but also you can't ignore them. The last one, the easy peasy one, will make more sense in a moment, but with the African fruit beetles, they're great display pets. They don't require any human interaction, though you can technically handle them. Some people will raise them in just tubs in the dark without heat. But personally, I do like to give them solar flood lamps because, they're sun beetles. They like the heat. They like the light. They come out during the day. So it makes sense. Now, cost-wise, sun beetles aren't too expensive. Their grub are even cheaper. I've actually sold some over Instagram before because I get too many that some of them I end up feeding to my geckos, but all they eat is leftover fruit, so other than their setup, they're really cheap to maintain. Next, I think I'm going to do the chahoua and crested gecko at the same time, just because their care, setup, diet, stuff like that is kind of similar. So I have Drogo and Lyra, and honestly they are super easy to care for me. However, I would rank them at intermediate. So if you've never owned reptiles before, maybe they'd be somewhat difficult. If you were ranking all of different types of reptiles, they would probably be classed as easy peasy. But in the context of this, I'd put them at intermediate. We can sit here and say, they're super easy to care for because they just need room temperature and 45 by 45 by 60 centimeter tank, no UV, no insects, but that's pretty basic and kind of meh, we can do better. If you truly want your reptiles to thrive, I'd recommend, putting a bit of effort in, adding some UV, a heater, especially in autumn and winter, offering insects as well as Pangea and Rapashi. So although there are benefits, they will survive even if you give them meh conditions, we want to aim for better. So of course that can push their care requirements up. And another thing is they have a low tolerance to heat. So although I'm saying use a heater during autumn and winter, if you live in a place where it regularly gets really hot, over 82 degrees Fahrenheit, then you might have issues. I actually had to buy a portable air conditioning unit just for them, mainly to keep the room cool during summer. So, you know, that's something to consider. Now, price-wise, chahoua crested geckos, their price can vary quite a bit. Of course, their setup and everything can cost a fair bit too. Feeding-wise, it's not too expensive monthly, but you would have to pay out for like a Pangea or a Rapashi and then have some feeder insects, so yeah. Next we have guinea pigs. I'm actually going to put them in challenging. Now, it's just because their care, their housing, the diet, their entertainment.
That you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
However, one of the reasons I think they're rated quite high in this, personally for me, is because I've become increasingly allergic to them to the point that like I have to clean them out every few days. And by the end of it, I'm like about to keel over. I can't breathe. I can't stop sneezing. It is really difficult. For that reason as well, I think Flynn and Fergal will be my last guinea pigs, just because it's really taken a toll on my health. But yeah, it blows my mind that rodents are considered good pets for like kids. The amount of space they require, the amount of waste they produce. As I said, rodents are quite sickly animals. They get unwell easily, like tumours particularly, so I have never had to go to the vet so much until I got guinea pigs, and sadly I lost 2 guinea pigs to inoperable tumours. Price wise, guinea pigs aren't too expensive really. Their enclosure can be, if you get them like a decent sized one, maybe you'll make your own. My boyfriend actually made me this massive pen for them that they live in. Obviously vet bills can be expensive. As I said, I absolutely love them, but unfortunately because of my allergies and everything, they are rated quite high. Then we have ants, and I'm definitely going to rank them as easy peasy. Now obviously depending on the species, some are hardier than others, some are easier to keep. If you are ranking all your ants, maybe Alassius niger, which I have, would definitely be like an easy peasy one. So I have a colony of black garden ants, and they're about 3 to 4 years old now. Once you have everything set up, like the first few years they only live in a test tube. It's super easy. It's actually better if you don't keep pestering them, so you mainly want to go in there and make sure they have food, water and sugar. And they're an interesting pet to observe, but they really don't require much attention, space, food. You know, they'll eat leftover feeder insects. So if you want a really simple pet, then I definitely recommend ants, especially black garden ants. Then we have a dog. So we got our rescue dog back in February. If you haven't seen that video, please check it out. She came all the way from Romania. She's an absolute delight, and she's basically our baby. But I will be ranking her as challenging, only because taking on a dog is like taking on a child, but probably not quite as intense, but it's still a lot. And it blows my mind that anyone would ever impulse buy a dog, or just I don't know. I did so much research. I've spent my entire life wanting a dog that it just blows my mind that people will get a dog without doing any research, especially a puppy. Now, as I said, don't get me wrong, I love my dog, and I knew it was going to be like taking on a child, because your life kind of absolutely revolves around them, when they walk, when they need to be fed, and also training them. Like, you could get so many pets, like you could have a completely feral rabbit that will try to like rip your eyes out, but the public doesn't need to know about them. Whereas with a dog, you're walking them and you want the public and other people's dogs to be safe. So you need to train them, so you need to put that effort in. They are certainly so much more effort. I love it, but it's not for everyone. Cost-wise, dogs can be very expensive with like food, toys, beds, insurance, vet bills that insurance don't cover, baby gates, harnesses, you name it. As I said, it's like having a child, but cuter. Probably not quite as expensive, but she is certainly the most expensive pet I have to like maintain and everything like that, but I love her. And finally, we have leopard geckos. Now, it's tempting to put them in the same section as crested geckos and chahuas, but I think I'm going to go with somewhat difficult. Since technically with like crested geckos and that, you could give them like a Pangea diet, and most of those diets are balanced enough in vitamins and minerals that you don't even have to think about it. And although I would say strive for a little bit better, you know, offer feeder insects and stuff like that, with leopard geckos you definitely need feeder insects. So that's an extra thing you need to take on, is looking after their insects. You need to gut load them and dust them. So if you don't know about supplements and UV and stuff like that, things can go downhill quick. So I'd say there's a lot more to consider with a leopard gecko. And of course for me, I could class them as easy peasy just because I've owned them over half my life. So it's like second nature. I don't really have to think about it. But of course they certainly require more attention and effort than like an ant or an African fruit beetle. So yeah, this is where I'm going to put them. Now price wise, leopard geckos aren't too expensive. Their setup can be, but their monthly food bills really aren't that bad. So yeah, this is my list. Do you agree, or do you own aquatics and think that their care is far easier than any sort of land-dwelling pet? I'd love to hear what you think. I was actually tempted to rank pets that I've had in the past, like rabbits, chinchillas, giant African land snails, but the video would get super long. But I'd love to hear what you think. If you have a range of pets, how would you rank them? And as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because it really helps. I don't post too much, so you won't get like bombarded with notifications, but it really does help. But anyway, thank you for watching guys, and goodbye.